I was 19 years old, 1999, and I was living in an apartment on Ninth Street between Avenue B and C. And I was selling drugs. And there were a lot of drugs in that apartment. And my roommates and I made a deal with each other that we wouldn't bring people to that apartment. Like we wouldn't just bring random people to like hang out there. You know, like if you have a girlfriend, you bring your girlfriend there. Very close friend, you bring your very close friends. But like strangers or random people or acquaintances, like you just didn't bring to that apartment. Anyway, I walk into the apartment one day and my roommate is there with a bunch of dudes that I'd never seen before. And they were pretty, you know, they were, you wouldn't want to run into them on a dark alley, put it that way. And they were all smoking weed, sitting in the living room. And I was like, what is going on here? And I like about faced as soon as I saw them, and I went into my bedroom and I closed the door and I locked it because I just, had a lot of stuff in there. The guys ended up leaving, but I heard my roommate talking about what he could do for them when it came to drugs. And when the guys left, I went out and I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like who are those guys? What made you think that you could share what happens here with those people? Those guys you're lucky they didn't pull out a gun and rob you right then and there. That's the kind of guys they were. Anyway, he gave me a whole song and dance. His friend Jay was really good friends with these guys. We went to high school together, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, a month later, I was walking into my apartment and I put my key in the door. And as soon as I put the key in the door, 3 guys came from the staircase flight above and rushed me and threw me into the apartment, put a gun in my face, told me they were coming to get everything that was in that apartment. They threw me in the bathroom. I was with a friend, actually. They put us both in the bathroom. They duct taped us, pistol whipped us, put a gun in my mouth, and proceeded to just, there was 3 of them, proceeded to I had a big North Face collection in those days. I was like a North Face fiend. I had 40 different North Face jackets and a bunch of sneakers. And they kept on putting on different North Face jacket. They were wearing all my North Face jackets, stealing that. And there was 2 safes bolted to the ground, one in my bedroom and one in my roommate's bedroom. And they were like, you're going to give us the combos to the safe. And I kind of knew, and I was a little crazy at that time too in my life, but I kind of knew that it was a Friday afternoon. They were not going to start shooting in the apartment, or at least I didn't think they were. They would beat us up. They would beat me, but I don't think that they would have killed us. I can't even believe that was a thought that was going through my mind, right? Are these guys going to kill us or not? But it was, and it was a real moment. And luckily, my roommate walked into the apartment while that was going on. And so they bum rushed him and he started making a lot of noise. They put a gun in his face and they never ended up getting the combinations to those safes, because had they have done that, I would have been in very, very big trouble based on what was in the safes. It went on long enough. They were trying to pry the safes off the ground with a broom. They were trying to, do all this shit and not make as much noise. But ultimately, they left the apartment and they got me for 40 grand in cash and, a bunch of weed, pounds of weed. But they didn't get the safes off the ground. And the interesting thing about that story is that, that was a real moment. I mean, gun in my mouth, duct taped in the bathtub, thinking, there's a chance that I could get murdered here. And I didn't think that it had to do with my drug addiction. I thought that it had to do with where I lived. I was like, man, I live in a pretty sketchy neighborhood. These guys must have caught wind. I didn't know, because these guys were smart enough to wait a month after they had come to the apartment. But the guys that robbed us were those same guys that were sitting in the living room smoking weed with my roommate. And I thought for sure that it was this other dude named Ninja, who's now dead. I thought it was him for sure because the weed that they had stolen was his weed that was sitting in my house for a couple of weeks. And I was like, dude, I can't move this. Nobody wants it. You got to come pick it up. And I had spoken to him like a day before. I was like, you got to come get it. And I was sure that he had sent those guys over to the apartment. But sure enough, it was those guys in the living room. And that's just like a little piece of how dysfunctional and crazy my life was as a, late teenager, early 20s kid in New York City thinking I was a tough guy. I wasn't. If I had a gun in the apartment, there's no way I would have used it, But the craziest thing for me about that story was that I was in such denial of my drug addiction. And the only reason why I sold drugs was really because I was addicted to drugs and it was a great way to make money. But I just never put one and two together that maybe this has something to do with the fact that I'm a drug addict, You can always find a reason or a person to point the finger at in your life. This is where I lived. That person failed. They didn't do what they said they were going to do. Most of the time, when things don't go well, you have a big part in that. So, holding yourself accountable to everything in life, holding yourself accountable when something doesn't go right, standing up and saying, that's my bad, that is my fault, I played a big role in this. It's a weird way to tie those two things together, but like every experience that doesn't go your way is an opportunity to learn and grow. And every time you don't take accountability, you take a step back.
If you like content like that, get stoked because we're going to be dropping a lot more content like that over the next few months. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. And if you're struggling with addiction, I can help. Pop over to @SoberFitDude on IG, shoot me a DM. I've kicked off a coaching platform that is specifically for men struggling with substance abuse.